In fact, this concept has been there for over. Here knows that indeed we've been advocating for this for some time now, for Ghana to adopt that kind of strategy. Unfortunately, it's not happening as much as we wanted it. The Global NCD Alliance have made efforts to come out with many documents, including the Global Charter Practice spoke about a few minutes ago. And then this year, but let me say the process started with WHO. They started so many consultations, and I want to believe most of you here, if you're not aware, um, like civil society were involved, people living with NCDs from different disease conditions were involved in the process to come out with that document. And that document simply seeks to ensure that it's going to be like a technical document that will support government across the globe to be able to put together structures, to support people with NCDs. Because we are talking about a disease that, is has come to stay with us. So, but how do we ensure that in decision making, we involve them in the process? So that we don't go by the adage that says that a rubber stamping of policies and programs. We used to hear this a lot in the past, where policies are developed by the sector ministry, and then they convince civil society or the community just to share with you the outcome, and that is it. By the time you notice, everything has already been completed. And I'm sure you also heard about the concept of co-creation, co-production, co-designing. So that is all about this document. But the point is this: since it's becoming difficult for the global community to accept, WHO took it upon themselves to come up with that technical paper, just so at national level, especially the Ministry of Health, that the lead agencies in various countries will take up that particular, challenge. Unfortunately for us, it was just launched in June this year. I'm told structures are being put in place to ensure that it's being operationalized. But today we are having a discussion, to find out from our own people, from the government sector, the Ministry of Health, the Ghana Health Service, the Mental Health Authority, and civil society organizations, including people with lived experience. How involved have they been in this whole process in terms of when policies, because we have so many policies on NCDs in the country, how involved have they been during their development processes? So we also find out from government, are there any structures that probably are available that we can tap into to ensure at least meaningful involvement is upheld? So on that note, I don't know what I should go around with the run of introduction, but maybe I'll start with a question. Once you get a mic, you introduce yourself so that we can do that fast. But I would like to start with Christopher Agbega from the other end. Yeah, so Christopher, I'm sure for you, in fact, Christopher is an expert. He has been part and parcel of, the process. Even the WHO consultation has been part of it. I have been part of it. I know Mata is here and some other civil society organizations. So Christopher, from your experience, having been an advocate for the past 5 years with respect to non-communicable disease, what can you say about structures, about your are you meaningfully engaged when policies are being developed on non-communicable disease? Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Christopher Agbega, an advocate and a peer trainer for the Ghana and Global NCD Alliance, as well as a member of the advisory committee, Global Advisory Committee on NCDs. Question of me being meaningfully involved. Based off of experience from being an advocate, I see that there's some sort of an imbalance. First of all, understanding why it is important to involve a person with a lived experience is one of the things that, to me, has not yet registered in the minds of policymakers, because for them, that is a whole technical field on its own that has a need for a certain level of experts to be a part of. So what it brings us to the question of what is the importance of your lived experience. over the period, I've also had a chance to speak to people in different regions across the world. I've even had a chance of training people to become advocates across the globe. And I get a sense of what also goes on in other countries. Some don't even have the opportunities at all. Some don't even know how to engage the government. One thing I would first of all acknowledge is the leadership of Labram and the Ghana NCD Alliance. You see, there's a certain level of proactiveness that comes with you wanting to be a part of policy development. You can't just demand for it. You have to work for it. In Ghana, the reason why we've been able to achieve what we have achieved is because of the leadership you've put in. So sometimes we are beneficiaries of that leadership because you've been able to imprint that need in the minds of policymakers. Unfortunately, in other regions, it's not like that. You would even be lucky for you to even be called for meetings. So we've been in meetings where, when I speak on meaningful involvement, you have, quote and unquote, the experts watering down what I'm saying by saying that they also have NCDs. So they are also experts. So what is the need for me to be there? And if you are not well equipped mentally, statements like this can deter you from wanting to speak on issues on policy, because at this very point you recognize that you are representing a whole community. So you are not just there on your own. You are not just there to benefit your own self, but it's for a larger group. So your success is their success. So you still have to keep pressing on. Another thing is also reading out wide, making sure that you are well equipped with the information. If it is data, you are well equipped. We sat before the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health, and the topic was on NCDs. And trust me, if I wasn't well equipped, I would have asked myself what I was doing in that office, because you had MPs asking questions back to back. And what is your purpose there if you are not a person who is technically, sound in terms of what NCDs are? So when we say meaningful involvement, and at the NCD Alliance, we even go a step further of training people. At the end of the day, when we say, okay, go and speak on issues on the NCD, you are well equipped. I have been well equipped. That is why when it comes to issues around meaningful involvement, I find myself within those structures.
Thank you.
But how then are we still going to be imprinting this in the minds of policymakers when they still want to, water down that importance? It's still an issue, but this is how far we've come.
Right, thank you very much, Christopher. I think you have made a very important point. The fact that for him, by virtue of where he sits, at least there's that kind of level of, involvement, but it is not it's not the way probably he would have wished that, the involvement is actually done. Now, let's hear from the lady in pink, Madam Benita. She also will share with us her experience, whether you can introduce yourself and where you're coming from, and then probably share with us your experience. The same question I threw to Christopher. Have you been engaged in policy making decision? I know on issues of breast cancer, there are many policies. How involved have you been?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Benita, and I am with Breast Care International, Office of Dr. Mrs. Beatrice Wiafe Adai. I would say in involvement, we have been quite involved, because without us being there, I think there will be a lot of early death even before treatment commences. So this is a person who comes to the hospital, and when the result comes in and it hits her that she's having cancer, if care is not taken, the person will just faint, because at the hear of the word cancer, it sends cold chills. So we are always there to encourage the person. And sometimes when we are done with the person just gets up back to her feet, and the person is smiling back again. And without us being involved, there is no need, because you need somebody who has experienced it. for practitioners there, okay, you know the treatment to give to the person, and maybe you have not gone through it. So for someone who has gone through it, the person will be able to communicate the message very well to the person who is newly diagnosed. In my facility, we are quite involved. We go for awareness creation, education, because what you understand, what you are being educated about, and you understand it, then you know how to go about it. Because for me, my mom died of breast cancer, and when she died, the awareness wasn't this much, and even when she died, I started growing up. She died quite early. She died when she was 39 years. She died on my hands. I saw all the pains she went through, the stigma that was being attached to it. And when she died, I made up my mind I was going to be an advocate. And you see, because there was no awareness creation then, I forgot about it. Even when you remind me to go for screening, I'll start binding you, and I'll tell you that it's not my portion. What killed my mother will not kill me. And eventually, along the line, I found out I was also in that part.
Right. So thank you very much for sharing those experiences. Now, so you keep the mic. So that's an experience you have shared. Now, so I want to look at it from the perspective of engagement in terms of sitting at table with policymakers, you know, to come up with policies that affect people living with cancers.
Yes.
Have you been involved in that space?
Yeah, sure. I have. Because, and when they get us involved, they try to find out our challenges and all that. And I often tell them that fighting cancer is just like surviving cancer. Because like we're talking about mental health. Because sometimes you just sit there and the thing just hits you. You're like, why did I even go through this? The depression sets in, the frustration sets in, and especially when you know you are supposed to have your two boobs in question and one is gone or two is gone, sometimes it hits deep down you. So they get us involved, they find out our challenges and so many other things. Yes, in my facility, we get involved.
Thank you very much. Can you hand the mic over to the man in white? Yes, he's my boss, and today I'm questioning him, the vice chair of the Ghana NCD Alliance. Right, so, and in fact, when he was being introduced, he was introduced as somebody who superintend over people living with hypertension and stroke. You know, so he's a big man, and he has a very tough work. If you see people living with stroke, you can imagine the kind of, the kind of stress that somebody who is a caregiver, who has been a supporter, goes through. So, Mr. Adams, I will let you introduce yourself proper, but if you can share with us, be an advocate in this space for quite some time now, advocacy for and behalf of people living with stroke and NCD in general. Yeah, so what can you say about the level of meaningful involvement, you know, amongst your people and even among yourself? Amongst your people and even yourself. Have you been actively involved in policy and decision making? Maybe at the Ministry of Health or whichever level, and have your people also be adequately involved in decision making? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Adams Ebenezer. I'm the Vice Chairman for the Ghana Non-Communicable Disease Alliance, and also the Executive Director for the Stroke Association. I sit as the Afro Region for World Patient Alliance, and also as a professionally rehabilitation professional as my main role as I play with the Ghana Stroke Association Support Network Ghana. So as you rightly said, the Stroke Association duly focus on rehabilitation and integration of persons living with stroke. Not only that, we do also focus on CVD, that's cardiovascular disease and stroke. Talking about meaningful engagement with persons living, let me start that, with persons living with stroke. Of course, the whole framework of the WHO meaningful engagement with for non-communicable disease and persons living with mental health and neurological conditions actually focuses on involving persons with the disease themselves to co-create general health system. I think we took a cue during the formation of the whole framework. I was part, Chris also was one of the facilitators of the whole thing. And of course, we've taken a cue in that. So on our work, we do engage persons living with stroke directly on our work. For instance, in the formulation of projects that we have undertaken. Currently, we are running a project called the CLASS program. CLASS program, the whole idea is to deliver stroke care, stroke rehabilitation care at the doorstep of the persons living with stroke in the communities whereby access to rehabilitation are a challenge. So we do engage them at the onset during the formation of the program for them to share what they need the most, because we cannot carry health service to people who actually are not part of what we are giving to them. And as it says, the whole idea of the framework of the WHO and meaningful engagement actually is about, it defines and justifies the motto of nothing for us without us. So that is the essence. And of course, we've moved on that trajectory in engagement of persons living with stroke, NCDs, and of course, CBDs and the rest. Talking about engagement on the aspect and the part of government, yes, we have. I think through the Ghana NCD Alliance, government did engage us during the formation stage of the national policy on NCDs. I think through the Ghana NCD Alliance, we were engaged. The Alliance itself actually organized a series of meetings with them. You know, when it comes to finances, we have to actually push for that. So engagement, though not fully engaged, but of course, in a bit, it has helped us to achieve our agenda, what we were expecting in the whole national policy. So I would say yes, on our part as an organization, we do engage persons living with stroke to actually develop programs that actually sit well with them. And at the national level too, I think the ministry is doing it best to engage us through the national Ghana NCD Alliance. So that's all I can say for now.
Right, so thank you very much, Mad Adams. Indeed, you have also expressed the fact that there has been some level of yes, there have been some level of engagement at your own level dealing with people living with stroke. It means that you engage them whenever you are coming out decision programs and stuff, and you also translate that, the fact that indeed, if you're at the ministry level, you have been somewhat engaged. Okay, right, so now we move to Madam Priscilla. Yes, so we're now going to the mental health bit. I'm wondering how the response for mental health will be like, engaging or ensuring that people living with mental health are adequately involved. You know, not recently, but Ghana have an act on mental health, right? And I don't know to what extent people living with mental health were engaged, and if they were engaged, how were they engaged? And are there structures that enables this kind of engagement at the Mental Health Authority? Over.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon once again. I'm Priscilla Tewi. I work with Mental Health Authority as the Deputy Director of Community Care. Like you rightly said, before the act was passed, persons living with mental illnesses, psychosocial and intellectual disabilities were actively involved. My former CEO is here. He will attest to the fact they were actively involved. Even when you read the act, the governance, persons living with mental illness is part of the board decision-making, the highest decision-making. So person living with mental illness is part of the board and other governance structures. It was well spelled out that person living with mental illnesses, psychosocial and intellectual disabilities must be involved. So we are implementing those well-spelled structures in the Act. Coming to practice, persons living with mental illnesses are actively involved. Currently, Ghana adopted the strategy of quality right, person-centered, individualized care plan, that when the client comes to you, the person, as we, the practitioners, we claim we are experts in the signs and symptoms and the treatment. The client also is an expert in experiencing the signs and symptoms. So they are experienced. So you can't just prescribe something for the people, like, for instance, rubber stamp, this is what we will give you. No. Now client is well involved. They have decision they take decision, the type of treatment they can take. And also, we give them the options. That is the key. You provide the options for them to choose. And the choice they make, you counsel them on the pros and the cons and how it will improve their care. So that's what I can say for now.
Right. So thank you very much. Yes. So I think we can give mental health an applause because it is actually it's not easy. I think even across the globe to have, the patients or the person living with a condition, at the highest, level of decision making. It's not an easy thing. So that's why I say we need to give an applause. And indeed, this is something that for us as Ghana NCDs, we will use that as a best practice when discussions are being held to demonstrate the fact that indeed, when it comes to mental health structures, people living with mental health are not, left behind in terms of decision making. Right. So thank you very much for that. And so, Doctor, I don't know whether I should say you are representing the Ministry of Health, but let me say that because Dr. Bafowa says you sit in for him. And as I mentioned earlier, the Ghana NCD Alliance is also a member of the steering committee on NCDs at the Ministry of Health. Together with, I think, one or two civil sector organizations in the private sector. It also means that the government is opening up to involve us as much as they can. So I don't want to say I'm doing your work for you, but just to find out from you, do you think the strategies are adequate? And do you think, how do you call it, how do you call you are engaging people living with NCDs enough? Here I'm talking about including neurological conditions. Unfortunately, we don't have, a panel member on neurological condition, but on mental health, on NCDs, how involved are you involving us when it comes to non-communicable, when it comes to developing of policies and then, and implementing them, including monitoring and evaluation? Thank you, and over.
Thank you. This is a difficult question, putting myself as somebody working at the ministry. But let me pick on from where you ended. I think you have all attested to the fact that in one way or the other, the ministry has engaged all of you. Before the NCD policy was passed, you were actively engaged. I know that civil society is also engaged. The structure at the ministry and some of the highest decision-making platforms at the Ministry of Health is such that you have key representation. So, for instance, there's health sector working group, which is one of the highest decision-making. On that platform, I know that mental health authorities sit there. The way it is, you cannot allow patients, as it were, or people living with the condition, unless maybe they belong to one of these agencies, to be there. But in a way, if mental health authority sits on a platform, it is assumed that they represent people with mental illness. Of course, now that the WHO has passed this meaningful engagement this year, there's an avenue to improve that level of engagement, that beyond the agencies and organizations that represent a particular group, we can have another way of engagement. Teaching hospitals are there, expected to represent people and share experience from all those who seek tertiary care. We sit there as well on the health sector working. Beyond this, there's also the agency leadership group, which is another high decision making. So these are platforms that the ministry have, and I'm sure I may not have responded well to how they are engaging, but I think that the way that NCD Alliance has been engaging, and now that this policy has come out in May, we can have a venue of, as it were, if involving people in some of the high decision making, it should be possible.
Right. So thank you very much. I don't think I have enough time to go. Back to my panelists for another round of questions, but I'm happy that at least we have the formal WHO, the Deputy WHO Director here with us today, and indeed, he can attest to the fact that in fact, there has been gaps, and there were gaps in terms of meaningful involvement of people living with non-communicable diseases, mental health, and neurological conditions in decision-making process. Indeed, all the things that have been said here, practically, you will see that it has not been very adequate. There are gaps, and that's why for some of us, we're very happy. And I know I posted on the platform, the steering committee platform, that hooray! And this year, we now have a framework that we are going to use as a basis to ensure that there's that kind of inclusivity, there's that kind of collective engagement of people living in NCDs to communicate their disease condition as much as they can. So, like I said, it is not about developing policies and then having a meeting with us and then I remember when I remember when is it on now? Yes, I remember when the